Hey everybody, welcome back to the Tales of the Pod podcast. My name's Michaela, I'm your host.
And I'm your co-host, Nick. Guys, how's it going?
So this week I'm super excited because we're going to be talking about Final Girls and Nick's going to incorporate Final Guys.
Yes.
If you're not familiar, which if you're watching this podcast you probably are familiar with the concept of Final Girls, but essentially it's a character that kind of survives the whole franchise and, usually in horror movies everybody dies, and these are characters specifically that live through either a franchise or the whole movie, despite, all the circumstances they're put up against,
Yeah, exactly. They come out on top, essentially. Either killing the people or killer that was after them or whatever, or defeating whatever was after them.
Yeah.
Essentially makes them the final person, girl or boy.
Yeah, I wanted to just do Final Girls initially, and then we realized there's actually a lot of Final Guys that don't get a lot of credit.
Yeah.
So we kind of want to touch on both of them. I think that's a good idea. And I love Final Girls specifically because I think a lot of times women in horror movies are made out as like this dumb character and they're like, oh my god, I just fell and now my boobs are out and I'm dying and they don't get like the credit that women deserve essentially. And I think these Final Girls definitely bring some credit to the gender for sure.
Oh no, I definitely agree.
So I'm excited to touch on it.
Yeah, so, I'll let you go first then.
Can we go first?
Yep.
Okay. So, the first Final Girl I picked is my personal favorite. I picked Nancy Thompson from Nightmare on Elm Street. So Nightmare on Elm Street came out in 1987. She was in the original one, and then she was in the third one. What was the Dreamcatchers? Like, it was the third, or like the
Dream Warriors.
Dream
Warriors. Third one, yeah, I think.
So she was in the first one, then she was in the third one. She came back as like a teacher.
She was trying to help the kids in the third one, yeah. And then she was in, Final Nightmare or New Nightmare?
Something like that.
Yeah.
But if you haven't seen Nightmare on Elm Street, Nancy's basically, she's the main character. It's her friend group that kind of gets attacked by Freddy Krueger. And what I love about Nancy is she's smart and she's not going to rely on anybody else to take down Freddy. She's like, she's going to do it herself. She literally gets these pills called I think they're called like Stay Awake pills, like some generic brand of something.
Yeah, what are they called? Because in the Freddy vs. Jason, they actually had like a name for it. Oh, Hypnosil. That's what it was. In Freddy vs. Jason, yep.
And she takes a bunch of them so she can stay awake and basically figure out how to defeat Freddy Krueger. She watches her friends get murdered. She watches her boyfriend get slaughtered from across the street. Mm-hmm. And I love that her dad is literally like the town sheriff, and she's like, screw you, I don't need your help, I'm going to capture Freddy on my own.
Well, he doesn't want to
Well, nobody believes that. Yeah. So she's like, alright, whatever, I'll do it on my own.
Right.
And like in the final scene, she called her dad, and she's like, come home in 10 minutes and check on me, essentially. And she grabs Freddy and brings him to the real world, and is like, alright, you're going to fight me in the real world instead of, quote-unquote Freddy's world. Mm-hmm. And like, let's fight fair and square kind of thing. And not to spoil the ending, but the movie's been out for like a million years now, so it's fine. But you think she defeats him at the end, and then of course he comes back.
Sure.
And in the Dream Warriors movie, she's kind of like a therapist or a teacher or something, and she's trying to help these new set of kids that Freddy is going after. So she's an icon. I mean, takes down Freddy on her own. She's smart. She has courage. She has survival instinct. She's resourceful. All the aspects that make up a good Final Girl. She survives a lot of the franchises. And yeah, she's one of my personal favorites because she's from Nightmare on Elm Street, obviously.
Sure, and I like her too because like in the first one, she sets up all the traps. It's kind of like Home Alone. Like she's got like the axe that's going to fall when he like trips a wire coming down the stairs and everything like that. And I mean, and like the gas and the light bulb, so it like blows up when you turn it on and everything like that. Like she's got very clever in trying to like kill him, I guess, or beat him or whatever.
And she figures it out.
She's only like what, a 16-year-old girl.
Yeah, she's supposed to be.
Give her props,
She's supposed to be a teenager, and it's crazy because she actually finds out everything. She finds out like who Freddy Krueger is, why he's going after them, what the parents all did, which the parents all collectively, burned Freddy Krueger and killed him essentially. Yes. She finds all that out. She's like, okay, that's why he's going after all of us, and tries to defeat. She's smart. She's not just taking him at his word. I love her. I think she's great.
No, she's definitely
she's a badass
Final Girl. I think one of the most well-known ones for sure.
I think she's underrated. Like I think when you think of Final Girls, you always think of like Jamie Lee Curtis and like Sydney from Scream, which we'll touch on them later. But I think Nancy gets forgotten a lot.
Sure.
And she shouldn't. I mean, Freddy's one of the hardest people to go after. Like, he can't sleep.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's in an alternate like reality.
He's in your dreams. So either you die of lack of sleep or you die when you finally have to sleep.
Yeah, exactly. So it's hard to avoid him, and she ends up getting the better end on him,
Yep, she ends up killing him. Well, she doesn't kill him, actually. I think she dies in Dream Dream Warriors or Dream Catchers?
No, because she's in. Well, I don't know, because that one was like kind of based around like Wes Craven making Freddy.
Oh, because then she's in New Nightmare.
Yeah, the New Nightmare, but that one's like more like the whole story of Wes Craven creating Freddy.
Yeah.
So, and she's like, I think her name's actually Heather Langenkamp,
which is her real name. Yeah,
in the movie, because it's like all about like the creation of Freddy and stuff. That's a good one too. It's a longer one too. I think it's like 2.5 hours.
It is long, and Wes Craven, you can tell by Scream too, he enjoys like breaking that fourth wall and talking about like the movie inside of the movie. You know, being being socially aware, like a movie being aware of itself is a unique concept that he definitely does a lot. Sure, definitely. All right, so for my final guys, I picked actually 2, but they're in the same movie. So it's Matt Hooper and what is his first name? Brody. Martin Brody from Jaws. So basically, Jaws, I'm not going to go into Jaws because we've talked about Jaws, I think, a couple times here. But essentially, Matt Hooper is the oceanographer that gets hired by the sheriff, I believe, hires him, Martin Brody. He gets hired to figure out what's killing the kid, like if it's really a shark, because they think initially it's a tiger shark, and he ends up, Matt Hooper ends up finding out that it's actually a huge great white shark, like one that's absolutely bigger than normal. And so they end up hiring I forget his name too, the guy that the one that owns the boat. Yeah, but what's his name though? The old sailor. Yeah, and I forget who plays him too, but anyway, they go out and they go hunting for the shark because he gets hired to do it, and then Martin Brody and Matt Hooper go with him because they want to also, help him take down the shark and everything like that. So obviously they encounter the shark. I think the first thing they try to do is they harpoon it, and they attach barrels to the harpoon. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. To track it, but the shark is so massive that it just takes the barrel right underwater. And I mean, that's a big animal to do that. They think it weighs somewhere in close to 6 tons or something like that. We're gonna need a bigger boat. Yeah, exactly. So they obviously got to take the step too, and I think they still could try to harpoon it and everything like that. And that's just really just pissing the shark off. So eventually the shark attacks the boat, and the unfortunate captain, everybody's favorite, I love the guy who plays the captain. Captain Quint. Quint is his name. Captain Quint. And who plays him? Do you know who plays him? Robert Shaw. Robert Shaw, that's it. Yeah, Robert Shaw plays him. And he's the best character in the whole movie, in my opinion. He's comedic relief, and then when the shark attacks the boat, which I think we've talked about this in the previous episode, but kind of gets tilted this way. Yeah. And the captain's kind of sliding down towards his mouth, and it's just so terrifying. He's trying to kick and move, and he's literally just sliding right into the shark's mouth. And they actually, Hooper and Brody actually are kind of the voice of reason, because after it attacks the boat, because it attacks the boat twice, and Quint goes crazy, basically. He's like, no, I'm catching the shark. Yeah. And he smashes the radio because they want to call the Coast Guard. Brody and Hooper. I'm getting all these names confused. I'm sorry. And they want to call the Coast Guard to have them come and help. But Quint's like, no, I'm catching the shark. It's my boat. So he destroys the radio, basically putting them, out in the middle of the ocean with no help in sight. So, and then he ends up dying literally shortly after that. And then Hooper ends up, I think he goes into the dive cage, and he tries to shoot the shark with some sort of nitrate or something like that. Yeah, basically to stop the shark's heart, essentially like that. It does not happen because the shark just completely eats the cage, so he ends up escaping somehow, I don't know, and Brody's still on the boat. And eventually the boat's sinking. They're climbing up to the top deck of the boat, kind of hanging on the mast of the ship. It's not a huge boat, obviously, so it's going to sink pretty quickly. And eventually, I think, a propane tank goes in the water or something like that. Yeah, they end up, blowing up the shark. Yeah, and they have a gun, and they shot the shark. The shark's obviously not going to, bullet's not going to kill the shark, so they end up shooting a propane tank, which in turn is near the shark and blows the shark up. Yeah. They get covered in the shark guts and everything like that, and
Eventually, I don't remember how they get rescued. I think they just kind of ride the current into shore somewhere.
Yeah, because they're just like, it's kind of like Titanic style. They're kind of just floating on like random remnants of the boat.
Yeah, they kind of they're basically adrift, and they come to shore eventually.
Which I would be terrified. I'd be like, okay, is there more? Is there babies? Like,
yeah, I know, that's the other thing. It's like now you're even more prone because you're in the water to shark attacks. But obviously the movie's not geared toward, that whole aspect of it. But that's essentially how the movie ends. And that really does make them good final guys because, I mean, they kind of overcame the odds and killed the shark. I mean, you're on a sinking vessel and, you have the idea to shoot a propane tank to blow up the shark, which, I guess you have to do. It is genius.
Yeah.
I don't know if that actually really happens in real life. If you shoot a propane tank, it explodes. I think it's got to be a certain type of, like, incendiary round or tracer round from a gun to blow up a propane tank. I think if you just shoot it, it's just going to spin around.
Then there would be no movie.
But yeah, then there would be no movie. But
and Martin Brody goes on to be in the second.
Yeah, he is in the second movie as well. And I don't really. That's what I think about his son, Captain Brody's son.
Yeah, and he kind of, I think the same kind of thing happens. He tries to warn the town.
Yeah, because he's seen it happen before and everything like that. So he makes an appearance, and so does Brody. He's also in the second one. I think the third one's about his son.
Okay.
Yeah, I forget which one it is, but I'm pretty sure the third one's about Brody's son taking, basically dad's dead, and, the same thing's happening again. But I don't think Hooper's in the third one. He's just in this Jaws 2.
Yeah, and I think it's cool because I think they're the only, we were just talking before we record this, I think they're the only, like, final people that fight off a monster and survive. Like, it's basically a monster that they're fighting. It's not like a slasher or a human or something like that.
You gotta wait until
my
other one, because there's another one.
There's another one? Okay.
Yeah, that's a pair that's fighting off. Definitely a monster. This is not a monster compared to
I was going to say, at first, I was like, that's really the only, usually it's like, Michael Myers or something like that they're fighting off.
No, but that's all I got to say really about those two.
I love Jaws. I want to watch it.
Definitely a good idea or a good way to kill the shark. I guess it was pretty visceral when it exploded.
It's savvy. It's like thinking under pressure. I wouldn't think to do that. I'd be like, let's.
Oh, it's like all attempts fail, and this is what we have to do now is just shoot the shark. We got to shoot the propane tank, which is really just like split second decision. It's just like I got one. I think there was only like one shot left in the gun.
Yeah, of course. One shot, one opportunity.
Yep, and he hits it, and boom.
Sees everything you ever wanted.
But yeah, that's all I got for that one.
I've always liked the oceanographer too. I always thought he was really smart.
Yeah, and he's played. I forget who Quint's played, or not. I'm sorry, not Quint. Brody is played by, but Hooper is Richard Dreyfuss.
Yes.
And I don't know who plays Brody though.
Yeah, I don't think he's anybody that famous. Okay, so for my next final girl, I have a girl that's a little more underrated, but definitely deserves more credit. I picked Erin from You're Next.
Yeah.
Which we just watched this movie, I think last week, because Nick's never seen it before, and I was like, you need to see this girl. She is such a badass.
Yeah, she was pretty cool.
But essentially, she gets invited to a dinner party that her boyfriend's parents are hosting. He has a lot of siblings. There's probably like 10 family members. The parents are stupid rich.
Right.
And these people in like rabbit masks start attacking with like crossbows. And they're taking everybody off one by one. Well, spoiler alert, you find out that the two brothers are in on it, and their idea was to kill the whole family and take the money from the parents.
Right, just to get the inheritance. Get that early.
And Erin included. Like, her boyfriend wasn't going to spare her at all. He was definitely going to kill her along with everybody else.
Yeah.
But what he didn't know is that Erin actually grew up on a survivalist compound.
Yeah, she's Australian too, so it was like a survival thing in Australia.
Yep.
That her
Until
parents
she was
were in.
15, and then she moved to the U.S. with her mom, but she basically grew up learning. Her dad thought, like, the world was going to end, essentially.
Yeah, like, we're going to run out of reasons. People are going to turn on each other.
Yep.
Basically like a doomsday cult she was in.
Yeah. So she is smart as shit. She's, like, putting tourniquets on wounds. She's, like, hammering nails through a piece of wood so they come in and they step on it. She puts this one guy's head in a blender.
Oh, yeah, she's a badass.
It's top tier. She does this one scene where one of the men is coming downstairs and she blinds him with the flashing of a camera. Mm-hmm. And then she kills him when he's basically at his weakest.
Right.
And she goes on to kill all of these men that were trying to kill the family. And, at the end, she learns that her boyfriend's in on it and the ultimate betrayal. And he's asking her, like, where's this person? She's like, I killed him. And then he's like, where's my brother? Oh, I put his head in a blender.
I know, and like the whole time he's like trying to talk her into like, hey, you know, it's just you and I now. We get all the money.
Yes.
Like, you know.
He's trying to gaslight her.
Yeah, he's just like, think about what you're doing, you know, like, don't kill me or something, you know. It's like either I go to jail and you get nothing, or, you know, you just say something crazy happened and we killed these guys and that's what happened, you know. And he's totally like gaslighting her.
He's totally gaslighting her. He's like, well, we can run away together. I can pay off your student loans. And she's looking at him and she's like, you were going to kill me.
Yeah.
And he's
that's
like,
all she's thinking. She's not thinking like anything like what he's, or listening to anything he's saying.
And he's like slowly walking towards her. And then she whips out a knife, and he looks at her and he says, why? And she iconically says, why the fuck not? And then stabs him and kills him.
Yeah.
And it's just, she gets played dirty at the end because then the cops show up and they think that she killed all these people, which I guess she kind of did, but it was self-defense. But they think that she was the person that initiated all this. So she gets screwed at the end. I hope there's another movie and kind of she gets redemption because all that work, all that survivalist instincts went to shit, really.
Yeah.
She got blamed for...
Well, I don't know, because at the end of the movie, I mean, the cops saw her stab the guy, so obviously the cop's going to shoot her no matter what. You know?
But if you look, like, after the credits, it'll show a piece of the newspaper, and it'll say Aaron, and it says prime suspect.
Oh, no kidding. All right.
So she got blamed for all the murders, like, the idea, you know, the girlfriend was trying to take all the money, so she came to the dinner party and she killed everybody.
I guess just...
And that's going to fight the whole persona, because she grew up on a survivalist compound, but...
Sure.
Out of all my final girls, she's probably the most badass. She's got the best background, and she was just honestly just prepared her whole life for something like this to happen.
Right.
And I love this movie.
Yeah, she's definitely a fighter, that's for sure.
And they're all guys, and she kills all of them.
Yeah, she beats the crap out of them.
Yeah.
Like that one guy with the meat tenderizing mallet,
yeah.
she just like breaks his knee with it and just starts tenderizing his face, essentially, with the meat tenderizer.
Yeah, she's like,
crazy.
Even there's one part where she's even has no weapons, and some guy opens a curtain, and she's right there, and she punches him in the throat.
Oh, yeah, oh my god.
So it's like, even without any weapons, even without anything to be like savvy by, she can fight somebody off with her own hands.
I know, I felt that when she punched that guy. I was just like, oh, because I've had that happen. That is not a nice feeling, getting punched in the throat, like in the Adam's apple. I think that's worse than getting the wind knocked out of you.
Mm-hmm. And I love her for like her emotional resilience. I mean, all this shit's happening. She's at somebody's house. She's seeing people die left and right, and she doesn't cry. She doesn't run. She doesn't anything.
Just like
she stays focused.
Full on adrenaline.
Yeah. Like, I know what we need
Fight
to do.
Mode.
And, you know, the one brother's in on it, so he's like, oh, I think we should go to the basement. And she's like, no, we're all staying here. Like, she's not that dumb girl that's like, let's go run off into the basement and, like, trap ourselves. Like, she's like, no, we're staying right here. We're calling the cops. Like, she does everything, essentially, she's supposed to do.
Exactly. Yeah, and that one brother's girlfriend was in on it, too. She was, like, part of it as well. And she was, like, kind of a weirdo.
Yeah, she beat the shit out of her, too.
Yeah, she beat the crap. Yeah, that was a good fight scene between the two of them. It was like they were both going at her, and she beat the crap out of them.
She fought off two people. Yeah, she got stabbed in the shoulder with a screwdriver and still fought back. Yeah, she even jumps out of a window at one point.
Yeah, no, second floor, too.
Yeah, she, like, throws something at somebody and then just distracts them and then jumps out of a window and runs off. But she's just smart. There's so many little things. Like, she tricks them. They think that she's going outside, and she really just goes back into the house. Because they would think, you know, there's no way she's going back in the house.
Right.
So she tricks them, and then she sets up, like, kind of the same thing that Nancy did. Sets up, like, an axe where if the door would open, the axe would go.
Yeah, the axe would come down. That's how the cop ended up dying at the end of the movie.
Highly recommend that movie, though. I love her. She's such a badass.
It is. It's cool, like, watching, like, a girl like that fight back. There was that other one, too, we watched. I forget the game, I think. It was called... No, not the game.
The Hunt.
The Hunt. That was with Hilary Swank. And that girl, she was, like, crazy, though. Like, she, like, you know, there was something, like, a little wrong with her. Like, she wanted to do this. Like...
She was a little crazy. Erin wasn't crazy. She was just definitely, you know, prepared for this.
For sure. All right, so for my next one, I picked Arkin from The Collector and the Collection movie. So essentially, The Collector and the Collection is basically this guy. He collects humans, and he likes to basically mutilate them into different forms of art, and he like puts them on display in his house or wherever, this weird underground lab thing. And The Collector was the first, and then The Collection is the second. It came out in 2009. The Collection, I believe, came out in like 2015 it came out. Maybe not that. Maybe 2012 it came out. But Arkin is in both of the films, and in the first one, he is a handyman that's hired to you work at this house, and there's a bunch of people there doing work at the house and everything like that. We talked a little bit about the collector.
Yeah, he's basically trying
previously
to scale the house so he can rob it.
Yeah, so Arkin's, he's in money trouble. His wife's in money trouble, so he's like kind of scaling the house to rob it. When he gets there, there's somebody else in there that has set up a bunch of these traps, and it's the collector, and he's taking a person for his collection. Basically, he's going to kill his family and take the daughter as part of his collection, and Arkin gets caught in the middle of all this, and he's just trying to rob the house because they have like a ruby or something like that collection that he's trying to get for collateral against the loan sharks.
And they're like, I would say like a higher level of like saw traps because they're everywhere.
Well, I was just going to say, this was actually supposed to be titled The Midnight Man when it came out. It was going to be a spin-off prequel to the Saw franchise, but the writers scrapped the idea. It was basically going to be the origin story for John Kramer and Jigsaw. But they kind of scrapped the idea and made it its own thing. Which you can kind of see there's a lot of influence in Saw because there's a lot of crazy traps like fish hooks hanging from like fishing line, like, hundreds of them. So you walk into them and you just get tangled up. And there's all these other sorts of traps that, are very Saw reminiscent. But
the mask, too. The mask is so scary.
Yes. The collector's mask is freaky. It's like this, looks almost like skin. But essentially, Arkin, so back to him. He is played by Josh Stewart. So you guys might recognize him. He's JJ's boyfriend in Criminal Minds. And he's basically a badass because he I think he gets caught in one of the traps. It is when he picks up the phone to call the cops. Because he was like freaked out. He's like, there's somebody killing people in the house. So he was going to call the cops. But the phone had like a needle that shot into his ear. So he's like, everything's booby trapped in this house essentially now. So he's trying to like avoid all these booby traps and stuff like that. He ends up getting the rubies and he's about to leave and he sees the collector going for there's a little girl in the house. I think she's like 10 or 11 years old. And so he goes back in and tries to save her and he actually he puts the collector in one of his traps, I think.
Yeah,
I can't remember what he does.
He tries to like spill a fish tank, and there's wiring on the floor, so he would essentially electrocute the collector.
Yes, yeah.
But the collector kind of walks in and sees what happens, and
he does. He tries to. He
throws like the mom's body in there instead, or something. So
because he was going to try to electrocute him, but then they end up getting away from him. The collector, and Arkin actually gets caught before they get away, and he's put into like some sort of torture thing. He actually rips these hooks out of his hands and gets the girl, and they end up getting freed. And it's what you think, but then he's in the ambulance. The little girl's getting taken by the cops, away, and then the collector comes back into the ambulance and kills everybody on the ambulance, and then drives away with Arkin still in the back. And then that brings you into the collection, which he ends up escaping or something. I don't know how that all ties in. But he's alive because you think he's going to die at the end scene because
he wakes up. The second one wakes up with him in the hospital, and the cops are there, which is kind of like this is like super unethical. This would never happen, but the cops are like, we need you to show us the collection, where his house is, like show us around because he's been kidnapped before by the collectors. And he's like, we're going to take. Which I don't know what cop would take a kidnapped victim back to the place and be like, show me around, and
it was
all booby traps,
Right, exactly. But then that one starts out differently too because it's like they want him to go into the place. Well, it's like a warehouse he's in. They want him because he's got other people in there, and this one's more like Saw because there's other people inside there that are like. Well, I guess part of his collection, but he's like torturing them and everything like that in there. So he's like trying to get them out. The cops have like the place surrounded the whole time too. And still somehow the collector just like still ends up like doing all this crazy stuff.
It's like Saw. I mean, the cops are no match for John Kramer. I mean, the cops will literally be in his office and he's still controlling everything.
Yeah, so it's very Saw reminiscent. And again, Arkin survives. I believe he actually does die in this one.
He does die in the second one, but he's just like it's shocking when you watch the first one how smart he is. With everything he does, even in the second one too, he's just so smart.
Well, he knows what to expect now. The first one, he really wasn't too smart. I mean, he knew to watch out for traps essentially. But like in the second one, he all right, this is like I've seen this before. This is what's going to happen essentially. He knows like how the traps work and everything like that. And all that stuff.
But even like the fish tank with the electrocution thing, I don't know if I would think of that.
Yeah, like I mean, that was a good defense right there. You know, if he comes in, you just drop the TV in the water, and he's gone. You know.
I don't know if I would think of that. My thing would probably be like hide, run, all that good stuff. You know?
And it's weird because like you think the collector died in the fire because like the basement, that's where he had him, and he ends up like the basement catches on fire, and you thought the collector died, and it does look like the end of the movie. It's they're all survive. He's going to survive. The little girl's going to survive. And then I don't know why they threw him that part in with the collector coming to take him away in the ambulance. Was that just like a dream? Because in the second one, you think he'd be dead, or unless does he get out?
Maybe so they can make a second one. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the second one maybe he escapes from the collector. I think he does. He ends up escaping. I have to watch the second one again. I haven't seen that in a long time, but I'm pretty sure that's what it opens as is. Arkin's escaping from the collection, essentially, and that's why, and then the cops are like, we need you to go back there because there's other people in there.
Yeah, because the collector takes somebody and puts them in, like, this chest, almost. It's like a box chest thing, and he puts somebody in there, and that's, like, his, like, collection for whatever, and he found, that's how I think in that second movie, he opens up the chest, and there's a woman in there, and she kind of starts to tell him a little bit how he kidnaps people. And
same in the first one, too, because remember, like, he opens up that closet, and there's a trunk, and he's like, he takes somebody, he kills everybody, and then he takes one person, essentially. So, yeah, that's Arkin. I feel like we talked more about the movie than Arkin, but, I mean, he is a pretty iconic. I mean,
all the odds stacked against him, and he's still
it's like escaping Jigsaw, essentially. Yes. He's basically escaping like a Jigsaw-type figure, somebody extremely smart.
Which is essentially unheard of. Somebody that's planned this way in advance than somebody that's caught off guard going against each other is unique.
Exactly. Excuse me.
Okay, so for my next pick, I picked the one and only Laurie Strode, played by Jamie Lee Curtis. If anybody doesn't know, Laurie Strode's obviously from the Halloween franchise. And I think she probably started the whole phenomenon of Final Girl. I mean, she is like the Final Girl. She literally survives all of the movies. Even when she dies, she still survives. It's like Michael Myers.
Yep.
Even when they get burned. I think she gets burned at one point. She like falls off a building at one point. She has a lot of deaths, but then she keeps coming back.
Sure.
And there's a lot of different versions of Laurie Strode, like, throughout the franchise. The first movie, she's like, she's younger, but she's kind of like this innocent little teenager, and she's just really scared, and she's running, and she's hiding, or whatever. And then in the newer movies, in, like, the new trilogy that came out, she's a badass.
Oh, yeah.
Her whole house is, like, decked out. It's like a military compound at that point. She's got guns everywhere. Like, she's ready for Michael to come.
She's done running. She's ready to fight.
She's done running, yeah. So she has a lot of, like, stages throughout her life. Even in some of the sequels, she comes back. You could tell she's more confident. She's ready to fight Michael off, but that Laurie Strode in the first one is just classic Final Girl to me. All her friends get killed off. She's like, oh my god, help me. And then, she makes the heroic action of saving both the kids. She goes and she gets both kids and hides them. And she is really the Final Girl, and she has a lot of character development throughout all the movies. And she gets to the point where she's just like, come after me, Michael, let's go. Like, waiting for him to escape and fighting something like Michael Myers that just will not die.
Right.
Has to be so tiring. Like, it's just like, god damn, this guy will not.
I know, she makes like
she burned him alive. She like he's been stabbed like numerous times. He's been everything, and he just will not die.
Exactly. So if you're fighting something that really can't be killed,
Right, and then he goes after her family and like later movies and all that good stuff, and she burns him. I think in the first of the trilogy, she burns him alive in her basement. And, like, the firefighters were going there. She's like, no, don't save him. And then he takes out a whole team of firefighters. Like, this guy is just, there's nothing stopping him.
I know,
but somehow this little, maybe 120-pound woman survives all these franchises.
Oh, I know. Well, yeah, that's the thing. She took a hiatus after the second one and didn't come back until, I think, H2O?
Yeah.
Or H20 or whatever you want to call it. And then she was in the Resurrection. Obviously not in the Rob Zombie one. She was played by somebody different. And then, so...
And I liked her character in the newer movies. I wasn't as big of a fan of the newer movies as obviously the older ones, but I did like her character, how... That's what I would picture somebody coming from that much trauma would be. They're like... Their house is decked out. She lost custody of her daughter because she tried to make her basically scared of the world and ready to fight anything.
Yeah, basically like that whole doomsday cult mentality,
I mean, she was at the gun range like every day, which I would picture somebody... When you watch a horror movie and at the end you're like, wow, what happens after you go through all that trauma? How do you go on? That's what I picture.
Right, exactly.
I picture you just like going balls to the wall and being like, I'm going to protect myself at all costs.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
She has like traps set in her house if he were to come in. I mean, she's got a lot of land. It's all fenced off, which I don't know if I'd ever sleep again, honestly.
I know, right?
With a man like that chasing after me.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's definitely the final girl. She's defied all odds in all the franchises.
Oh, I know the thing too. It's like it's her brother coming after her.
Yeah.
So the whole, you don't really. I mean, they hint at it. In the second one, they say like, that's Laurie Strode is Michael Myers' like little sister essentially, but you don't really. It's not like a big thing talked about. You know.
And at first, she doesn't know that. She's just like this little shy teenager that's babysitting and unsure of what's going on. But she still makes the effort. I need to save the kids. I need to, all my friends get killed off. I need to check on my friends. And then I like how in the later movies too, they have like the same cast. They have the same sheriff. They have, Tommy that she babysat and she helped save. Lindsay that she helped save too, the little girl.
Yep, exactly.
And how much they respect her. Yeah, I love Laurie Strode. She does not what you picture really as like a strong, like physically strong, I would say. You don't picture her that. I guess she's just smart to survive all these movies.
Yeah, I mean, she is smart. Like in the second one, she knows like to go hide and stuff like that, and like how to avoid. And she's like really drugged up in the second movie, in Halloween too, because she's in the hospital. They gave her a bunch of drugs and to keep her calm and whatever. And
she knows to basically just never relax again in her life.
Yeah, never take it easy.
No.
She's definitely got like that paranoid in the newest one. She's definitely like that paranoid.
Oh yeah, like severe PTSD.
Yeah, extreme.
Paranoia for sure.
But it pays off because they end up getting them.
Completely understandable.
Right.
All right, you want to go next?
All right, so I picked another duo here. It is Childs and McReady from The Thing. I'm not going to talk about really The Thing at all. The movie itself, but Childs and McReady, they were the last two people to survive the attack at the U.S. Outpost 31 in Antarctica back in 1982. And at the end of the movie, you see them both riding, I think, they're hiding somewhere, or they're riding away in something. I can't remember what
they get taken away in a helicopter, don't they?
They do, but they're like they're in like a hut or something like that before the helicopter comes.
Okay.
And they're talking and everything like that, and then they get on the helicopter and they're sharing like a drink together and stuff. And there's a lot of animosity between Childs and McReady. Childs was a mechanic, and Reddy was a helicopter pilot. McReady was a helicopter pilot. And there was kind of like during the movie, there's a lot of animosity because Childs is calling McReady a murderer because he killed the one guy, thinking that there was something wrong with him.
Oh, yeah.
And there was really no proof that there was, but it ends up he was in fact the Thing had imitated him and whatever, assimilated him and everything like that. And so at the end of the movie, they're the only two to really survive the Thing. At least you think that. But it's also there's a lot of theory behind who is
you don't really know
assimilated by the Thing. You don't really know. And there's a couple, like the comic book, The Thing from Another World. The comic book says that Childs actually is the Thing, and he reveals himself to McReady when they get to Argentina after the helicopter takes him out of Antarctica. Then in the video game, it's also saying that Childs is the Thing as well.
Interesting.
So, but you never really know in the movie, and I don't think in the remake either they tell you, the one that came out in 2010. I don't think they tell you in that remake either.
Which is kind of nice to be like ominous. Like, I think that's a better ending, like not knowing.
Yeah.
Because then they just go on, like, who knows how long they go on without trusting each other, being like, what if they go on to kill each other?
Yes, exactly. And McReady is very smart. I can't really remember Childs. I mean, Childs is smart too. Childs is played by
the more main character.
I think it kind of more focuses around McReady, but Childs is played by Keith David, and R.J. McReady, he is portrayed by I'm drawing a blank here, Kurt Russell, and so McReady's really the smarter one because he knows like the blood. There's like he thinks that the Thing comes in through like contact with the blood, so he ends up coming up with the idea like, okay, we're gonna hold flame to like we're all gonna draw each other's blood essentially, and we're gonna hold a flame to it. And if the blood starts to morph or something, or the person starts to scream or something like that, that whoever blood we're putting the flame to, we know that they're not human. You're not gonna feel your blood boiling, outside of your body, obviously. So that's really what kind of sets him up as being kind of like, okay, this guy obviously understands what this thing is and everything like that. And Childs agrees with him after that all happens because it kind of proves that, like, Childs was wrong. that guy really was part of the thing. So then they kind of bond about that. There's still a little animosity between the two of them throughout the whole movie. I don't really know why. I think it was just part of like the theatrics of the movie and everything like that.
Some drama.
Just a little bit of drama thrown in there to make it a little more. But
McReady's definitely he's a good leader. I mean, he's like, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to quarantine this.
And he definitely, and I think that's what the thing with Childs was, is McReady was taking control. Yeah. And McReady was, he was he was a drunk, he liked drinking and stuff like that and everything like that. I think Childs wanted to be the one that takes, charge of the group and leads them,
a lot of times safety. With a group of men, too, it's hard because, like, they don't like to give each other control, I feel.
Yeah.
Like, how do you... Or it's, like, the suspicion of, like, well, how do you know that? How do you know that the blood would boil if you're not a part of it,
Right, exactly.
Are you part of the thing, too?
Exactly. So, yeah, that's essentially those two guys. McReady, he at the end of the movie, you're left wondering who is the thing, because there's like the way they talk about it and stuff like that, you're kind of, one of them's got to be the thing. It doesn't obviously say who, but one of them's got to be it. And they're both smart. Like they know the fire kills it. I think Childs actually discovers that because he's the one that goes and kills the dog when the thing first assimilates the dogs in the kennel, and he kills it with fire. Dog. And then it jumps, and obviously blood gets on somebody and it jumps and everything like that. So he's definitely crafty as well. He knows to use fire against this thing. Fire destroys everything, essentially.
Well, and that's a lot to survive. I mean, to survive like an actual monster like that jumps from person to person is terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea of the thing is just brilliant.
Terrifying.
I mean, it's something that is, obviously way beyond our intelligence, and our comprehension, because it does stuff like that,
Yeah, it's like Alien-esque.
So you're really... Oh, it's very alien. I mean, it's super alien. Yeah, so essentially that's R.J. McReady and Childs.
Okay, so for my next pick, I did another... Probably the other most well-known final girl is Sidney Prescott from Scream. And I love Sidney Prescott in the Scream franchise. What I love about her is kind of similar to Laurie Strode. She's not, like, really physically strong, but she's, like, mentally strong. Mm. Her own boyfriend literally tries to kill her, kills all her friends, and kills her mom.
Yeah.
And she still goes on, and she fights back and doesn't let the emotion take over.
Oh, yeah, she's very strong, yeah.
She's super strong, and this thing, Ghostface literally targets her from day one, and throughout the entire franchise, he goes on, it changes, Ghostface obviously changes, and they go on to kill other people, but she's always the main culprit of it. Like, they're always trying to get to Sidney Prescott.
Yeah.
And...
Yeah, I don't know why.
She starts off losing her mom, and then... her friends get all picked off one by one, and then she finds out it's her boyfriend's best friend. So just that betrayal for the beginning and being so young definitely made her into the person that she became.
Sure.
And then she tries to move away, and, it follows her. It just relentlessly pursues her, calls her. Like, if somebody was calling me all the time like that, I'd be like, oh my God.
Hello, Sydney.
I know. I'd be like, let it go. Definitely very independent, though. Like, a lot of times she has help from, what's his name, Dewey?
Yeah, Dewey. Courtney Cox.
Yeah, she has help from them a lot, but most of the time it's just her. Like, it's her versus Ghostface most of the time. Like, she'll meet up with, like, some of the newer characters in the movies, but a lot of times, like, she's the one. And she's smart enough to be like, nope, we're not going in that house. Like, we're not going there. Ghostface will be there, whatever. She's smart. She's savvy. She's a pretty good final girl, like I said. Not as much, like, physical, but definitely she's got the emotional strength.
Yeah, oh yeah. And she's a fighter, too, I gotta say.
She's a fighter, And
yeah, she's because they call her in, like, the ones when she's really not involved in it.
Yeah.
Because, like, I think it was, like, the fourth one or the third one. They're not directly involved. The third one is when they're making a movie about it, remember?
Yes.
And they actually call her to be like, we think...
Yeah.
It's like there's a copycat killer out there again, essentially. And that's like all that is like it's really just a copycat killer. The whole
every movie,
franchise, it's just a copycat killer.
And how frustrating to have a copycat killer based on your own trauma.
Right, exactly.
And I like that. She doesn't depend on anybody else. She takes independence, and she's like, whenever they call her up, she's like, all right, I'll handle this myself. And whenever the other characters try to get involved, she's like, nope, don't follow me, don't come with me. Like, I'm going to fight this on my own.
Right.
And then, of course, they always do, because it's a movie, but
sure,
she doesn't need anybody else's help. She makes her own decisions.
Yeah, she's badass.
She definitely develops, like, the same way that Laurie does. You know, they both start off as, like, these innocent little teenagers that are kind of like, oh my god, what's happening to me? Like, all distraught.
Mm-hmm.
And they turn into these, like, badass young women, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
That are just, like, ready to go. Like, they're tired of this shit. Like, same thing with Laurie Strode. Like, I'm not going to be a victim anymore. I'm going to fight back.
Right.
And, I mean, in the newest movie, spoiler alert, Dewey dies.
Mm-hmm.
And she still gets Ghostface at the end. So, I mean, she really doesn't have much help. And she does it all on her own.
Yeah, because the newest one... I can't remember because there's been a couple.
There's been so many. That's another thing too. Is she's been in every single one. Like Laurie Strode hasn't been in.
Well, because she wasn't really in that one though, wasn't she? They just kind of called her. She made like a cameo.
Came at the end,
Yeah, because she was just like, I just want to like give you like props and wish you luck, essentially, and like killing the killer. You know?
I think there's been like some drama. I don't know the extent of it. There's been some drama with like the new director of Scream, and like they wouldn't pay her what she's worth. Which she is the franchise at this point. Like, they've made her the franchise. So you can't, if you're going to want her in the franchise, you need to pay her what she's worth 100%.
Exactly.
People go to see this movie to see Sydney.
Right.
I mean, it's so iconic.
Exactly.
Hearing Hello, Sydney, you're like, that's not going to be the same with anyone else.
No, I definitely agree.
But yeah, Savage for sure.
Yeah, she is a badass. Alright, so for my next one, I picked Chris Washington from Get Out.
That's a good pick.
Because he is a badass.
He's such a badass.
I'm sure a lot of you, I'm pretty sure we talked about Get Out on this.
We talked about it a little bit in our first episode. At least I did.
Yeah, so just a quick rundown. Chris Washington is dating a white woman. He is a black man. And they go to her family's house for like a getaway type of thing.
Yeah, it's like
I don't know, there's some party
weekend,
or something stupid thing these people are doing, the family's doing. And when he gets there, he notices that they have, like, black servants, and he's kind of like, what the hell? You know, that's, like, super weird in this day and age and stuff like that, you know, and he's very, like, this is weird, like, right off the bat.
He gets weird vibes, and she tries to reassure him, and they try to, I mean, the reason we mentioned race is because this movie is all about race.
It is. This whole movie is just...
It's very important that he's a black man and she's a white woman, and... You know, initially, right off the bat, the dad's like, I voted for Obama twice.
Yeah, he's like...
Trying to make it apparent that he's not racist.
Exactly.
Which is a Jordan Peele movie, so definitely
yes, it is directed by Jordan Peele. So he gets there, and he sees that they have black servants. There's a woman and there's a man, and they're very... Creepy, and he's like, why are they acting like that?
Yeah.
They're not, like, he goes and tries to talk to them, and they're very, like...
He tries to talk to the woman, and he says something like...
I don't really feel, like, comfortable talking about it, because it's, like, it's very, like, they're not fitting into the stereotype.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they're not acting...
Well, they're just not relating. Like, he says something like, you know, I get too uncomfortable when there's too many white people around, and the maid just kind of, like...
Yeah, she's like, smiles. Oh, what do you mean? Like, I don't have that feeling. Like, so they're not, like, they're just not, he doesn't understand why that is, you know? And so that's, like, super, super weird right off the bat. So long story short, these people show up for this party, and they all have, like, black counterparts that are with them.
Which are much younger.
Yeah, which are much younger. So, and then he's like, okay, there's something weird going on here. Why do all these white people have, like, servants, black servants, essentially? And so he calls up his one friend, the airport guy, who's funny as hell.
TSA.
He's like the TSA guy, and he's awesome, man. He's just like, there's some weird, like, kinky sex shit going on here, and he's like believing him. He's like, yeah, that makes sense, because they're like all these, it's just weird because they're all like in their 70s and they have these young, like 30-year-old black women and men serving them, it's super weird.
Well, no, one woman, she's probably like 60, and then her partner is black and he's like 30 maybe, and Chris snaps a picture of him and sends it to his friend, and his friend's like, yeah, that's so-and-so from our neighborhood. Like, could you ever imagine him dressing like... Yeah, he went missing.
And so he's like,
could you ever imagine him dressing like that? Like, he looked like he was going to, like, Kentucky Derby with, like, rich people.
Exactly. So that's the whole, like, premise. So race, there's a lot of, like, racial, like, things portrayed in this movie. And essentially what he comes to find out is that the family that his girlfriend is part of is basically, I don't know how exactly they're doing it, but they're hypnotizing black people and then putting the brain or the mind of the white person into the black body. So they're going to act white but be in a black body.
It's similar to, like, Skeleton Key, if anybody's seen that.
It's kind of like that,
essentially what they're trying to do is get, like, a younger, more fit body to live in once they get old, because, like, one of the people that they take over, he was, like, a Olympic track star.
Yes.
And they take over his body, and, I mean, they're basically just trying to, like, have a, like, stay alive forever.
Yeah, they're basically, yeah.
But they're obviously racist as fuck. Like,
yeah, it's super racist, too, and it's, like, super, super weird, so... Chris ends up getting hypnotized, and he's on his way to getting his, brain switched out with this weird, blind,
he's creepy,
art dealer guy.
Yeah.
And Chris actually knows him, knows his work and stuff like that, and wants to be a part of, like, his museum.
He's a photographer, Chris.
Yeah, Chris is a photographer. And, so that all ends up happening. He ends up getting out of it because the whole point of them to, like, get the surgery done is, like, you're constantly hypnatized and being like kind of like
under this, like, spell.
Yeah, under this spell, essentially. And he ends up putting cotton in his ears to stop, like, the hypnotist brainwashing from happening. And what happens, the son comes in to kind of get him ready for the surgery.
And he pretends that he's, like, under the spell, and he's, like, acting comatose, and the son comes in, and as soon as he's unbuckled and he has his hands free, he attacks the son.
Yep, kills him, so there's one down. Goes into the laboratory, kills the dad, who's the guy doing the surgery.
He's like a neurosurgeon.
Kills the guy that essentially bought him because there was an auction held for Chris. Kills that guy, the art dealer dude. And then he's like, he's basically on a warpath now. He goes upstairs, kills the mom. The brother somehow survives, and then he ends up killing. He ends up killing the brother, and his girlfriend's the only one left. She's part of this whole thing too.
Yeah.
And she, like, gets a gun and tries shooting at him and everything like that. And then the guy that I mentioned earlier that they took over his body. Yeah, the Olympic track star. He ends up. Yeah, I'll just let you do it. Yeah, you go.
Sorry, Chris. Gets through to him, and he ends up attacking the girlfriend. He kind of gets through the trance and is like, I forgot what he says to him, but then the track star guy ends up killing the girlfriend.
Yeah. Yeah, and he ends up shooting himself, too. And then the TSA guy comes, and he basically takes Chris, and he's like, I told you, TS motherfucking A always has your back. We handle things.
TS motherfucking A. We handle shit. And
that's how the movie ends.
He's like, consider this situation handled.
But yeah, I mean, Chris definitely is a good final guy because he, definitely overcame and got out of that situation pretty in a smart way, too. It's just stuffing something in his ear to stop listening to the hypnotist, something as simple as that. He was able to escape it, Yeah. And he was a badass and he killed all those people. I mean, he was just like, there was no mercy spared. I mean,
there was no expression on his face.
Yeah, he was just like, you guys are sick. And that is a really effed up thing to do. And the whole, I mean, it's a great idea for a movie, but it is super like, what the hell,
Yeah.
It's just super crazy.
Yeah, the plot twist is crazy. It's definitely very Jordan Peele-esque.
Yeah, and like I said, it's very heavy on the racial, injustice that the country, our country goes through.
Right, 100%.
I mean, it's sickening, really, but it's a great statement, to prove it. This is literally a scenario that could happen because of it.
Yeah.
It's very well done and definitely a great movie. But yeah, Chris Washington's definitely a great badass.
Yeah, he goes through, he kills them all. There's like no look on his face. He's
let
me get out of there.
It was funny because like the mom saw him and ran through like the teacup to try to hypnotize him again. And he's just like, breaks her arm.
Yeah.
He's just like, oh no.
I know, I love that part because I remember the first time I watched it, I was like, wait, how's he getting away right now? Like, he's under a trance. And then you see that he put the stuff in his ears, and I was like, oh my god, that's so smart. I would never even...
Yeah, I know. I'm like, oh yeah, that's super
You're sitting
smart.
there, you're tied up. And even when he's watching the video about the guy telling him, like, oh, I'm going to take your brain and take your life, basically, his face, he's just like, really? Like, he just looks so annoyed. He's not crying. He's not whatever. He's just like...
I know. He's like,
you gotta be kidding me.
I know. Great movie.
Okay, so I have one more pick, and then I have some honorable mentions. So for my last girl, I picked Sienna Shaw from Terrifier 2.
Mm-hmm.
Which, if you guys haven't seen Terrifier 2, definitely highly recommend. It's a little different than any other Final Girl or really like horror movie, because usually in the first movie they introduce, the final girl or the main character or whatever.
Sure.
But in this franchise, the final girl or main girl was introduced in the second movie.
Right.
They actually killed everybody off in the first movie, essentially.
Yeah.
So it starts off, and I think in the third movie, Damien Leone said that we're going to learn more about the background and the connection between, Art the Clown and Sienna, because there definitely is some connection there.
Yeah.
Like, her dad was, like, drawing pictures of Art the Clown, but then her dad passed away, and then her little brother is, like, obsessed with Art the Clown.
Yes, there's something weird
going on. There's a lot of connections there. But it's like this big lead up to Halloween night, and Art the Clown is kind of tracking Sienna all over town. He's like, same thing, going after her friends, which her one friend that he kills, which we talked about in the worst death scene when he pours like bleach on her after he's like scalps her.
Oh my god, yeah, that scene that's iconic.
I mean, he's a savage.
Mm-hmm.
And then Halloween night, she goes out with her friend and she takes drugs, so she's kind of out of it. And Art the Clown goes to her house. He kills her mom. He what's he do? He hits her in the face so much with a bat that it's all caved in, and he mouse feeds her mashed potatoes.
That's the third one.
No, it's the second one.
Second one? Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. No, you're right. Yeah,
and then the little brother too. The little brother tries to escape, and then he ends up calling Sienna and is like, Art the Clown's after me, whatever. So Sienna kind of sobers herself up, goes, finds her brother, and she has this, I say 30-minute showdown, I'd say, with Art the Clown, 20-30 minute. It's pretty extensive, all while she's trying to save her brother and escape.
Yeah.
And Art is he's supernatural almost.
He is in this movie. Yeah, they definitely put that element heavily. You think in the first Terrifier, there's something a little supernatural with him, because he does get stabbed a bunch of times, doesn't die or whatever like that. But then they make it really apparent because there's also, following Art the Clown around in this movie, there's this demonic. It's this demon that takes the form of a little girl, Art.
That only he sees.
That only Art sees. So there's definitely something supernatural with it.
But he doesn't speak, so it's hard to
Yeah. Well,
gauge.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
and
hard
the
to
thing
understand.
too is you see it portrayed in the second one where he's at the laundromat cleaning up after he comes back from the dead. First off, he goes to the laundromat to wash his clothes, and there's some guy in the laundromat that wakes up because he's snoozing there and sees Art playing patty cake with nobody there, but Art sees this little girl that's dressed like him, has the corpse paint on and everything like that, and so there's definitely a supernatural aspect to Art in this movie.
So he keep that in mind, you're trying to kill this thing that's basically supernatural. You're trying to kill him, you're trying to do everything you can, and he just keeps coming back to life. It's similar to Michael Myers or Jason or whatever.
Yeah.
And Sienna is not supernatural. She's a normal person, and she still keeps fighting back. Even the brother, too. He does, I think he, stabs the brother, cuts him up pretty good, and the brother fights back still.
He's still alive. Yeah, he's starting to eat him, too, remember?
Yeah, he's starting to eat him. But, her and Art just go at it for, a really long period of time to the point where you're God, this is, never going to end, but in a good way.
Right.
And then at the end, she, still stands up, and she's in, this warrior costume, and it's just, a really badass-looking scene, and she uses the sword that her dad had given her, and basically tries to kill Art with it, but of course, he lives, because there's going to be a third movie.
Sure.
And he's supernatural, but she's just an underrated final girl, and go up...
It's new, too.
It's
new,
it's
a newer movie.
And I feel people don't really... When it's a gory movie like that, people don't appreciate it as much.
No. Which is a shame, because it's an awesome movie.
And she finds out, her brother tells her that her mom died, and she still puts that emotionally away, and, fights for her brother, fights for herself at that moment.
Yeah.
And goes after Art the Clown, which is definitely a feat. I mean, nobody, in all the movies, between Terrifier 1, All Hallows Eve, nobody's been able to go after him or injure him at all.
Exactly.
Nobody's injured him or anything. They shot him, but he came right back.
Right.
So for her, a little teenage girl, to do that is definitely iconic.
Cuts the head off, but then obviously if you wait till the credits roll, you see at the end of the movie, he's not really dead. His head's being rebirthed. I'm just going to say that.
Yes. I don't know if we can mention how, but
it's pretty. If you wait till the end of the credits and you watch after the credits, there's a good. It shows what's going to happen in the first.
It's interesting because the woman that's rebirthing him at the end, her name's Vicky. And she's in the first movie, too, but it's interesting because instead of making her a final girl from the first movie, they make her someone that's obsessed with art, and she turns into, a bad girl,
Right, so, she gets, possessed. Yeah, she gets possessed. There's, that's that supernatural aspect, because she's, she was on that talk show in the first one talking about, how her face and everything.
She ate the other girl's face.
Yes, and then she attacks her, so she gets possessed by something crazy. But yeah, it's definitely a good one. And also, I wanted to mention, too, that Sienna's dad also drew a picture of the costume that Sienna wore. So there's something there's some sort of story that's going to be we're going to see in the third one that's going to explain all that, the tying together. I think that's why she was able to defeat Art, too. And even the sword that she had that her dad had.
Or something.
Yeah, it was something that her dad had. So we're you kind of think maybe Art the Clown's her dad or something like that, honestly. There's something crazy going on there.
Honestly, what a flex. But even
she a crazy uncle.
She has a house fire even, and everything burns but the sword. The sword does not burn or melt or anything at all.
Yeah.
So it's did the dad bless that or something like that? Or was the dad in it with Art the Clown? Were they together?
I don't know. Yeah, it makes you really wonder. And
I don't know.
Yeah, so it definitely is going to be one of those things we're going to wonder about.
I did just want to honorably mention, I had some honorable mentions for Final Girls. I wanted to shout out Wendy from The Shining, which I think definitely a really good final girl. I mean, she goes up after Jack, she saves her son, she goes up against all odds. They're literally stranded in the middle of Colorado in the winter.
Oh, yeah.
Still manages to get the snowplow, find a way out.
Mm-hmm.
Clara Rivers from the Final Destination franchise, which I think she's in the first 4 Final Destinations.
No, she actually dies in the second one.
Oh, does she?
Yeah.
She's good, though. She's very smart. She knows exactly what's going on.
Well, the second one, and she does in the first know, like, her trusts Alex's visions and stuff like that.
She's a good final girl. And then the last one I want to touch on was Denise Willis from House of a Thousand Corpses, which I guess you could argue she doesn't really get away at the end. They kind of have, like, a Texas Chainsaw Massacre moment where... You know, she thinks she's driving away to safety, and then the backseat comes over. And,
yep, exactly.
But she still, I mean, she goes through the trenches to get out of that house.
Right.
So she definitely puts the work in.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. She definitely was a fighter there.
Like, after going through the whole, like, basement and underground thing and being buried alive.
Satan's, laboratory.
I would have been done for.
Oh, I know, man.
The being buried alive alone, I would have been done.
Right.
Panic attack.
All right, so for my last one, I picked the one and only Ash Williams, and he's definitely like the
final guy.
The final guy. I mean, he's the ultimate badass, next to McReady, in my opinion. So I'm not. If the Evil Dead movies, he's in the Evil Dead movies, which Evil Dead 1, 2, and then what the hell's the third one? Where he goes back in time. Why can't I think of that?
Oh, isn't it like Army of Darkness?
Army of Darkness, yes. So that's the one where he goes back in time. Then he's in the series Ash vs. the Evil Dead, which is a great series. Definitely go watch that. But essentially, he was a store clerk that went on a camping thing with his girlfriend and a couple of his friends and their significant others, and the rest is history. He basically battles evil that gets released when passages of the Necronomicon are read aloud. And basically everybody around him, I don't know why it doesn't affect him, but everybody around him turns into zombies and, like, demons.
Yeah.
And it's just, I mean, obviously the movies, you guys have definitely seen Evil Dead movies.
They're outrageous, yeah.
So there's a lot of craziness that happens in them and everything like that.
A lot of blood.
Yeah, so he's just, fights evil. And the way he does it, he's got a chainsaw in the first one.
Chainsaw hand.
Eventually, the second one becomes his hand, and there's a shotgun, and he just is dismembering, and there's blood everywhere. And, I mean, he doesn't die. I mean, he fights the evil.
And he's got to kill his girlfriend. He kills his sister.
Yes, he kills his sister, his girlfriend.
And he doesn't think twice. He's like, all right.
Yeah, and obviously, this first Evil Dead, you're kind of wondering how there was an Evil Dead 2, because he goes back to the same cabin where it happened with, like, a new girl and everything. It's like he doesn't have any memory of what happened literally a year ago. And it's just iconic, man.
I mean, that's the way to make a sequel, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, Sam Raimi does an amazing job with these movies, and that's Ash in a nutshell. I mean, he's just a badass with a chainsaw for an arm, and he kills these demons that possess people. And I don't know, the remake, when it came out in 2013 or 12, I can't remember when it was. That was good. It was taken, I think, a little bit more serious.
It was way more serious
than what these ones. I mean, they're kind of corny. And then the new one, again, it was taken, I think, made to be a little bit more serious. The one that the Evil Dead Rise that came out last year or the year before, I believe. And not bad movies or anything, but I think he just makes the movie as well. So when you don't have him in a movie titled The Evil Dead or Evil Dead Rises, it's kind of like, well, what's the point? You know? I mean, Ash, that's what you want to see, is Ash being the badass, Yeah. He's got catchphrases and stuff he says in the movies, especially in, like, the series. He says catchphrases all the time.
I like Bruce Willis, too. He's funny.
Bruce Campbell.
Not Bruce Willis, yeah.
Bruce Campbell. And, he's another, like, horror icon, too. He's been in a couple other horror movies. Him and Sam Raimi were actually friends doing research about Bruce Campbell. They were friends in college, and that's why he started The Evil Dead. That was Sam Raimi's first movie that made him big. And
I wonder if he was just like, you can't kill me off. And they're like, okay, we'll put you in every single movie.
Yeah, all hail the king. That's what he always said, baby. All hail the king. Especially because in the third Army of Darkness, he's like the king after he defeats everything in the 13th century.
Random.
All hail the king, baby. All hail the king. Yeah, it's super random because he goes back in time to fight these demons and stuff like that. It's just great, man. He's just such a badass.
Yeah,
definitely a lot of like fan art too done around him. And,
he's
just his whole idea of him is just kind of timeless, you know.
He's an icon for sure. He's definitely well respected.
For sure. And I got a couple honorable mentions as well. I did Paxton from Hostel. He's good. He's good. He basically, you know, he had the chance to get out of there like scot-free, really, but he turned around and saved some of his friends and some other people that were in there, and he still ends up getting away. I think they all died still, though, but
he still, he still could have ran away and saved himself.
Exactly. So he goes back and fights and, you know, gets out of there still. Then there's Finney from the Black Phone, which he's a good fight. He's a young kid, you know. He's like only 10.
So smart.
And he ends up, because he's talking to the ghost on the phone and everything of the past victims. So he's able to use, you know, what he's learning from the ghost to set the trap to kill the guy that is the killer in the movie.
Which the traps he set is really smart.
Very smart, yeah. And then Mike from Phantasm. He's actually one that survived the series. I haven't watched, I think, Phantasm 4, which came out like way after the original did. But Mike's definitely smart. He ends up getting away from the tall man, while everybody else is, you know, succumbs to the tall man, essentially. That's a movie I want to talk more about in maybe a later episode, because I do love the Phantasm movie. I think it's probably one of the best sci-fi horror movies, you know, in a long time at least, because it's very, very science fiction-y. In a cool way, not like monster way like The Thing is and everything like that. You know, don't get me wrong, Thing's my favorite movie.
Well, some of them can be cheesy. Like some movies can be cheesy.
Exactly. It's very cool the way that, I forget the guy that directed it, did it. But yeah, very good.
I like you mentioned the Black Phone too. I think that's a cool concept for a movie when I saw that.
It is cool too. Yeah, we'll have to talk more about that because that is a good movie.
I love Ethan Hawke.
Oh yeah, Ethan Hawke's the man.
So that's Final Girls and Final Guys.
Yes, it is.
So tune in next week for our next episode. But until then.
Yeah, stay spooky, guys.